we got to talk about the United States women's national team. They have a pair of friendlies right around the corner. We're doing this on a Halloween, so it's October 31st. November is tomorrow. The international window is coming up sooner than you think. 2 game set. Tuesday, November the 10th will take place at DRVPNK Stadium in Fort Lauderdale, and then Sunday, November 13th at Red Bull Arena in Harrison, New Jersey. United States women's national team are going to take on Germany. This is exciting. And we talked a little bit about this when the friendlies were even just announced, how thrilled you were, because it essentially meant that the United States women's national team was going to close out their 2022 calendar year going up against not one, not two, but three FIFA top 10 ranked programs to close things out. So they had that pair of friendlies in Europe against England and in Spain. And so now they're going to close out with 2 games against Germany. And they're going into this one in a bit of a 2-game skid, dropped results in October. So here we are. We're going into about a month later, and now they're going to face Germany. But not only are they going to face Germany, we know the 24 who are going to be participating in camps for these Germany friendlies. Let's go a little bit back and forth here, Lisa, and let the people know who got called into these camps by head coach Vlatko Andonovski. I'll start with the goalkeepers. There are 3 coming into the mix. It's Adriana Franch, Casey Murphy, Alyssa Nair. Defenders, Alana Cook, Crystal Dunn, Emily Fox, Naomi Girma, Sophia Huerta, Haley Mace, and Becky Sauerbrunn.
Midfielders, Sam Coffey, Lindsay Horan, Taylor Korniak, Rose Lavelle, Christy Mewis, Ashley Sanchez, and Andy Sullivan. And then rounding out the forwards, 7 of them as well: Ashley Hatch, Alex Morgan, Mallory Pugh, Megan Rapinoe, Trinity Rodman, Sophia Smith, and Alyssa Thompson. We've got our 24, 3 goalkeepers, and then 7 defenders, midfielders, and forwards as the roster rounds out. Some new names, some names back in the roster. A lot of old faithfuls still in this mix that we get to see and continue to see. But I think a big emphasis for these friendlies is that this U.S. side is going up against Germany, who is runners-up in the Euros this past summer, a top 3 team. It's exactly who you want the United States to play after losing to England and then Spain just about a month ago.
I like that we're seeing a little bit of continuity. That is something that we have seen out of Vlatko Andonovski and the head coaching staff in general, leading out of the CONCACAF W Championship in July. So we've seen, like you said, Lisa, a lot of familiar names here, because post championship win there, post World Cup qualification, the coaching staff has tried to retain a little bit of familiarity coming out of that particular competition.
Right.
So the 23, 25 players who were in and out from really June, even those friendlies against Colombia ahead of the CONCACAF qualifier, we've seen in some type of rotation. Injury has obviously played a big factor during this kind of second half of the calendar year for the United States women's national team. I mean, it ultimately impacted the roster that was named for that CONCACAF W Championship, but we've still seen a lot of those similar players across the rosters for all of the international windies to have taken place since then. So I'm not too surprised by some of the names that we've seen that we're seeing on these 24. I do even like that somebody like Alyssa Thompson is getting a second consecutive call in to these camps.
Yeah, I
Young
think
player on the roster, always excited to get about that.
Yeah, a high schooler, right? A high schooler that did travel to Europe, and that experience there definitely helps. And I mean, this just says that Vlatko Andonovski in the U.S. were really pleased with Alyssa Thompson and what she brought to that window in Europe, and what she was able to do in training, in the games, and in the minutes that she was given. And I would expect maybe a little bit more minutes from her as she's now playing in the United States. And I think the environment is incredibly different than playing in Wembley or in Spain against England and Spain, respectively. But I mean, I think we have to talk about some of the new names added to this list, Sandra, because as you said, well, so many of the consistent names, right? Like Casey Murphy, Alyssa Nair, Sophia Huerta, Emily Fox. Like there's so many players that are consistent in this roster. Ashley Hatch, Alex Morgan, Pugh, Verpino. Like these are players that have been in the camp consistently. Trinity Rodman, I know she was like on the fence 6 months ago, 9 months ago when we were talking about these rosters. Now she's a namestay for Vlatko Andonovski. But we have to talk about the new names, because even when the United States went to Europe and they played against England, they played against Spain, there was players initially called in and then dealing with injury because it was the end of the NWSL season. Players like Mallory Pugh not on that roster, Alex Morgan, Taylor Korniak dealing with ankle injuries, and they are all back listed on this roster. It's really, I think, adding Pugh, Morgan, Korniak to the front line and the attacking presence of this United States back on this roster is truly crucial for the elevation of the United States. And coming off of that 2-game skid against England and Spain, now heading into Germany, it's players like Pugh, Morgan, Korniak that help contribute to the success in the attack. And there's also a huge name listed under the goalkeepers, Kansas City current goalkeeper Adriana Franch. She is backlisted on this roster after a stellar club career with Kansas City. I know that this makes you happy. This makes me happy. We talked about it after the NWSL championship, that this is a player that deserves looks and should be back on there. Now we get to see her name. When it first dropped, Sandra, what did you think when you saw Franch on there? We can't hear you, buddy.
I muted myself. Sorry, can you guys hear me now? Put a Y in the chat. I love to see you all interacting in the live. I was elated. I was elated to see Adriana Franch called into this camp. Yes, Hannah. Love that AD Franch is also back on the roster. I agree with you. Absolutely well deserved. Look, we chatted in Audie Field. We went live from Audie Field, and we took a little bit of Q&A to sort of close out the NWSL season. And our listeners had asked us a little bit already, like, hey, like, what do you guys think about this upcoming USWNT camp? Who would you like to see? And we chatted about players from the final, specifically Kansas City Current. And I said that I really wanted to see AD Franch back in the mix for the national team camp. And coming out of that CONCACAF W championship, there was nearly every player had seen time on the pitch throughout the duration of that tournament. And unfortunately, Aubrey Kingsbury, who went as the third goalkeeper, was not one of those players. There was rotation between Alyssa Nair and Casey Murphy. And then coming out of that tournament, having already qualified for the World Cup, for the Olympics, winning the whole tournament, knowing that there were going to be a handful of international windows remaining, and sort of looking at the form of NWSL and taking note of the fact that Franch was putting together a very, very strong season with Kansas City Current, I was ready to see her called in a bit earlier. I mean,
Yeah.
the real mix of that undefeated streak that Kansas City went on took place like kind of during the summer and throughout the final stretch of the regular season. So I almost just sort of felt like I was waiting. I was like, oh yeah, any one of these camps now, French is going to get called into, back into the mix with this team. So
Yeah.
to sort of see her name on there now against another top team, I'm really excited. I'm really excited for her.
I agree. I mean, so well deserved for this player, and she has been in the mix before. She has 8 caps with the U.S. The 31-year-old really led this Kansas City side, and Vlatko Andonovski, for those that don't know, lives in Kansas City. He's based there. So, in his media availability, he talked about how he had gotten to see her a lot at the end of this year, and as Kansas City went on their run, and there's just something different about a coach watching a player in person, especially when on the streams a lot of times when you're watching a goalkeeper in particular. So much of how influential they are on the field is what's happening when the ball is at the other end of the pitch, right? Or their vocal ability that you can't always pick up on a broadcast. So the fact that Andonovski attends these games and can watch someone like Franch in person and understand that her leadership on the pitch isn't just because she's getting 7 goals or 7 saves in a semifinal match and all these clearances, but her vocal leadership and her maturity and her veteran ability to lead a Kansas City side, which she is the one that led them into the NWSL championship. And she put a lot of weight on her back in doing that. Even Sandra, you and I talking to some of the field players leading up to the playoffs for Kansas City, saying that AD Franch is a player that has such high expectations of not only herself, but all of the players around her. And she will hold you to those standards and those high standards that she has set. And that's something that Vlatko Andonovski has seen before, maybe hadn't seen in the last year or so, being traded from Portland and then heading to KC, but she has proven herself and consistently, right? It's not just proven yourself in one game against Shield winners, getting 7 saves and a shutout, but it's doing that consistently in moments of adversity, in moments of really tough and tight pressure. So deserved for AD Franch to be back on this roster. So deserved. But
I think that gives a little bit of ammunition to what I was saying, though. I mean, to hear Vlatko in this press conference, you and I were able to sit in a little bit and sort of hear him field questions. And he mentioned that him being a local to Kansas City, that he has been able to watch Franch and her performances a little bit more closely, perhaps, than some other teams in NWSL, and that he was very impressed with her season, specifically that second half of the season with the Currents. So it took a little while, but she's finally back in the mix with this goalkeepers union, and we're so excited to see it.